All right, let's dive into the world of one of the sharpest observers in all of literature, Jane Austen. Now, you might think her stories are just, stuffy drawing rooms and formal dances. But underneath all that is this brilliant, absolutely timeless takedown of society. So let's really get into the wit, the woman, and the incredible legacy of Jane Austen. I mean, come on, this has to be one of the most famous opening lines ever written, right? In just one sentence, Austen just yanks us into this world of social maneuvering and, let's be honest, romantic ambition. It's the perfect setup. It's witty, it's a little cynical, and it perfectly sets the stage for everything that's about to unfold.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? How can these novels about women in bonnets trying to find a decent husband 2 centuries ago still feel so relatable, so real to us today? Well, that's the mystery we're here to solve.
So to really get a handle on her books, we first need to get a handle on the woman herself and the world that she was living in. So let's take a quick look at her life.
Jane Austen's life was actually pretty short, just from 1775 to 1817. But look at this incredible burst of creative energy right near the end. In just a few short years, she published the 4 novels that would cement her legacy forever, and then 2 more came out right after she died. It was just a truly amazing, super productive period.
So what makes an Austen novel, an Austen novel? It's this amazing mix of things. See, she wasn't just writing romances. Oh no, she was a razor-sharp social critic, using all this wit and irony to basically call out the absurdities of her time. She was also a pioneer of this technique called free indirect discourse, which is just a fancy way of saying she lets us right inside a character's head to hear their unfiltered thoughts. And maybe most important of all, she put women and their inner lives right at the center of the story. And that, for her time, was totally revolutionary.
Okay, let's look at our first published novel from back in 1811, Sense and Sensibility. Really shows off the style perfectly. It basically introduced her to the world through a story that's all about the push and pull between 2 very, very different sisters. So the whole heart of the novel is right here, with these 2 heroines. On one side, you've got Eleanor, who is all sense. She's practical, she's controlled, she does what's expected of her. And on the other side, you have Marianne, who is pure sensibility. She's all passion, impulse, and emotion. And by showing us their 2 different ways of living, Austen basically asks us a huge question. Should we lead with our heads or with our hearts?
But hey, this is way more than just a philosophical question. The book is a really sharp critique of just how few options women had back then. See, when the Dashwood sisters suddenly lose all their money, getting married isn't just about love anymore. It's about pure survival. Austen shows us this world where a woman's entire future, her whole life, depends on making a good match.
And now, we get to the big one. Published in 1813, Pride and Prejudice isn't just her masterpiece, it is literally the blueprint for pretty much every romantic comedy that's come after it. At the center of it all, you've got 2 of the most iconic characters in literature. First, there's the super smart, witty Elizabeth Bennet, who is maybe a little too quick to judge people. And then you have the wealthy and, let's face it, pretty arrogant Mr. Darcy. Their whole story is about them getting past those terrible first impressions, overcoming her prejudice and his pride. And as they figure each other out, the story hits on these huge themes that still feel so relevant. I mean, you've got Elizabeth Bennet just completely challenging the idea that she has to marry for money. The whole plot is a warning about judging a book by its cover. And in the end, the story is all about marrying for love. And this is the big one, the power of personal growth. Both of them have to seriously change as people before they can find happiness together.
But don't think for a second she was a one-trick pony. Austen's next 2 novels really show her incredible range, because she goes from that sparkling, witty vibe of Pride and Prejudice to something much more serious and, complex.
Yeah, Mansfield Park is a totally different kind of book. This is probably Austen at her most critical. We see the world through the eyes of its quiet, incredibly moral heroine Fanny Price, as she watches her wealthy relatives just sort of decay into selfishness. It's a really challenging novel that digs into that uncomfortable link between having a ton of money and having 0 character.
And then just a year later, she does a complete 180 with Emma. The main character, Emma Woodhouse, is described as handsome, clever, and rich, and she is absolutely certain she knows what's best for everybody. The result is this hilarious comedy about her totally disastrous attempts at matchmaking and how she eventually learns a thing or 2 about herself. It's a brilliant look at self-deception. Okay, so the 2 books that came out after she died, they each have their own unique vibe too.
One is this really playful satire, and the other is, honestly, probably her most emotionally mature story.
To really get this next book, you have to know about something called the Gothic novel. It was this hugely popular type of book back in Austen's day, full of spooky castles, dark secrets, and heroines who faint all the time. Austen saw this and basically thought, oh, I can have some fun with this. So in Northanger Abbey, the young heroine, Catherine, has read way too many of these Gothic novels. So when she goes to visit a real abbey, her imagination just goes completely haywire. She starts seeing evil plots and dark secrets behind every single door. It's just a really charming, funny story about a young woman learning to tell the difference between fantasy and real life.
And then there's Persuasion. This is Austen's most thoughtful, most poignant novel. The heroine, Anne Elliot, is 27, which was considered older back then, and she is just full of regret. See, years earlier, she let her family persuade her to break off her engagement to a man she loved because he didn't have any money or status. And now, he's back, and he's a successful captain. It's a really beautiful, mature story about getting a second chance at love.
So, after all that, let's circle back to where we started. Why? Why do these 200-year-old stories still have such an incredible hold on us?
Well, it really boils down to this. Jane Austen literally helped invent the modern novel as we know it. She gave us these timeless insights into how families work, the pressures of society, and just the struggle to figure out who you are. She created female characters who weren't perfect. They were smart, they were flawed, and they were deeply human. It's just brilliant storytelling that somehow feels forever new.
And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. Austen wrote about the pressures of money and class and finding the right partner in a world that had all these rigid rules. So when you think about her world, think about ours too. How have those pressures changed? And more importantly, in what ways have they stayed exactly the same? It's a question that really proves just how timeless she'll always be.